Good morning everyone. So that video was taken by 20 students yesterday and put together by CNIT, which is one of our partners for this year's forum, to capture some of what's happening behind the scenes. So I thought that was a wonderful thing to start the day with. I gave you 2 days yesterday, Dare to be prompt. Thank you for being here again this morning, and Dare to share. And we had so much sharing yesterday, so much so that we've been trending on Twitter. If you check on Storyfy, we have captured all the social media activities and weave those into stories. So have a look there. If you missed any session, you want to know what happened, Storyfy has been captured by a group of writers and students. So this morning, we're going to start by playback by the CEO Champion workshop, which happened yesterday. And the question the CEO were given is, let's dare to imagine what the workplace of the future, an inclusive and diverse workplace of the future looks like. To lead that conversation, we have Nina Gardner, who is Strategy International Sustainability Advisor, the founder of Strategy International Sustainability Advisor, and also Professor of Corporate Sustainability at Johns Hopkins. Please join me in welcoming Nina and her panel. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I really am impressed because I'm the one who told Sophie, I don't know about 8:30. This is tough for Paris, especially with a party the night before. But you did it, so thank you. And I'm glad, and I hope you won't feel that you got up for nothing, because actually this is an extraordinary panel. And what happened at the lunch yesterday was extraordinarily inspiring, because really, since 2007, I believe, thanks to Ernst & Young, the CEOs have gotten together to really grapple with some pretty intractable issues on women in the corporate culture and on boards and pay and all the issues that CEOs can actually do something about. And so I have to say it's the first time that I had watched that in action. It was really moving. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the readout of that, we're going to take a macro view of the situation of women on boards, women in general, actually, in terms of where it's the pulse of the gender inequality globally. And who can do that but, of course, the OECD. And if you haven't seen this incredible book, of course it's the OECD. I'm going to do a shameless PR for you, because this is an extraordinary volume, Pursuit of Gender Equality, an uphill battle. It's that second part that's a little bit upsetting. The other, okay? So, before we get into the corporate world, we really need to understand what's going on in every country and the policies that every country needs to put in to push the dial. And I can't think of anybody better to do this than the Secretary General himself of the OECD, Angel Gurria.
Thank you very much, Nina. Well, violence against women came up surprisingly as a big issue in our report, because it had been an issue mostly in emerging and developing countries, and it came out as a big issue in OECD countries. Very big surprise for us. Almost a third, one out of 3, was suffering some kind. That was quite amazing, because we had some others, women being paid less than men, the pay gap, that was more of a classic. The question of the 25 for 25, remember the initiative that we took, the OECD took to the G20 to reduce the participation in the labor market by women vis-a-vis that of men by 25% by the year 2025. And of course, that was done in the proper way. Gabriela Ramos, who you heard yesterday, was a G20 Sherpa, she got the Lady American Sherpa and the Australian the Australian Sherpa was a lady, and then the Turkish Sherpa was a lady, and the 4 ladies told the Japanese Sherpa, who is a man, say, Mr. Nagamine, tomorrow you are going to present this wonderful initiative. And of course, the 25 for 25, he presented it. The 4 ladies immediately raised their arm. Then everybody was inevitably led by that momentum, and now we have a G20 target, 25 for 25. So this is, that
was an ambush.
Facing prejudice due to gender stereotypes starts at home, starts at home, starts at home. It's not in the school, it's not in the workplace, it continues in the school and the workplace, but that's a low number of women in high levels of politics and business being a classic. So, well, Nina mentioned the pursuit of gender equality and uphill battle. This is the 2017. We already have a series of these. And then, actually, Gabriela is going to present in Cairo this Saturday, tomorrow actually, women's economic empowerment in selected MENA countries. The impact of the legal framework in Algeria, Egypt, Jordan, Libya, Morocco, and Tunisia. You know, this is
That's very. Can I ask?
building an inclusive Mexico, gender equality in Mexico. But what about Germany? Dare to share Germany's experience promoting equal partnership in families. Gender equality in the Pacific Alliance, promoting women's economic empowerment. You know, and it just goes on and on and on.
But I need to ask you, what came out of the report that was surprising to you, apart from the gender, the violence against women, which for the OECD, it was shocking.
Listen, the fact that we have to go again and again saying that there is a pay gap and that there is a participation gap in the market, etc., does not make it boring. It just means the problem is still there. So you don't need new things all the time to push you into action. But we were surprised about the question of the violence coming up in the context of OECD countries. And the other question was about the influence, maybe we'll talk about it in the next segment, the question of how the financial education also is helping to deepen the gap.
Yeah, financial literacy.
Financial literacy, financial education, because there is another important reason there why the gap is widening.
Well, it also can be linked to domestic violence, because you may stay in marriages because you feel economically worried if you decide to get out, and you have no wherewithal, and you also have no idea to manage your money. So the OECD, that is a huge new sort of issue, and thank you on that. I think
there are more here, anyway.
But they're all on the website, the OECD website. And if we want to be sustainable, can we also get them
Women in financial education, you know?
Yes, okay, there we go.
You tell me one word, I'll give you a book.
Great. This is the man with the book, and this is the beauty of the OECD. They are the people with the data. So if you want to talk knowing your facts, you have to go to the OECD. There is a book for everything, as you can see, and but they're tracking it with gender disaggregate statistics, and actually this is really important, because until you have gender disaggregate statistics, we really cannot measure, first of all, the issue, and then you can't measure whether you're moving that benchmark. And so I thank the OECD for that. We will continue talking in the panel, but I will then move to McKinsey, Georges Deveau, who has been a senior partner, and you're now in Africa. So you were in Japan for many years, so that was a real tough place to be. So you've seen all the issues, the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of gender diversity challenges. You really put together an incredible study for the CEOs yesterday at the lunch, and I was wondering whether you could share those with us, because there were some very striking things that we all were pretty surprised about.
Well, thank you very much. And I first want to say that this is a very special moment for McKinsey on this topic, because it's literally 10 years ago that we started this series of research called Women Matter. And it's always been in conjunction with the Women's Forum. So a big thank you to the Women's Forum for being a strong supporter of this.
I have to say, for all of us who have been pushing this issue, Women Matter was the seminal paper that we used with the CEOs and top management to say, it's not only a good thing, it makes good business sense. So thank you to McKinsey, because that was the one that is the paper we kept using, so thank you.
So as I said, very emotional for us and for me as being part of that adventure with my colleagues. Let me share you a couple of insights. The first one is, it's obvious, and I think we shared it yesterday, the case for change is real and is understood now. You know, it wasn't the case 10 years ago. But whether it's on the macroeconomic perspective, there's 12 trillion of GDP at stake, or on the actual institutions, there's institutions that have more diversity at the top perform better. So I think that's not the case. The thing that's always surprising, it may be obvious, but it's always surprising, is that the progress is just slow. It's just too slow. If you take about the G20 corporates, only 17% representation of women on board, and only 12% on executive committee, 10 years later for at least where we've been. So it's just not enough. That's the issue. So the question then becomes, what are the barriers? And there are obvious barriers that remain, you know, double burden, etc., the 24/7 presence. But the more interesting one, I think, that we talked about is the fact that it's not about ambition. Because when you actually do a survey, we did a survey of 1,400 executives in the world, you know, you have, you know, men and women are 79% and 81% all want to achieve top management positions. So it's not an ambition problem. It's really a confidence in the system and in the fairness of the level playing field that is making the difference. That's where the drop-off is. So that's one first part. So the question becomes, what do we need to do to accelerate? One of the first one is engaging men. And sorry for all the men, us men in the room, but it's us. You know, there's still 28% of men in our surveys who say there is no difference between a man and a woman in the ability to achieve a top management position. It's completely surprising. It's shocking in a sense. And that was something that we need to work on. And we need to work on making that a joint effort. So that's the first thing. The second thing I think is around implementation. And implementation matters. Most CEOs would say, we know what the different levers we'd have to use. The problem is, are we pursuing them with discipline and ruthlessly? And that, I think, is one of the big elements where we can make a difference. Rather than going into more detail, what I wanted to also say thank you is, this time for this report, we asked 16 leaders, many of you are in the room, Michel Landel from Sodexo is here, there is Angel, he's here as well, who coming from different parts to actually give insights on what they think needed to be done. And it makes, I think, this whole, beyond facts and research, it makes it very real, with people who have the experience and the willingness and the record to make a difference. So I would encourage you to read those quotes. Those are very important quotes. But one thing we did ask them to do is to say, what in your view would define the inclusive company or institution in the future? And we synthesized this, and it comes up with 10 arguments. I'm going to go very quickly in them, but there's 10 elements that people would say that would be the institution of the future. And I hope this will, they had to be unorthodox, which I found very important, i.e., you know, you have to constantly challenge the status quo, otherwise things don't change. It has to be polymorphic, that means any different leadership style is valued. It has to be empowered. It's quite obvious in these days, but not obvious in all companies, I would say. It has to be multifaceted. It has to mirror the society in which we live in every region. It's got to be meritocratic and fair, that's pretty obvious, but it has to have no bias, and that's more difficult, at least from my own perspective at McKinsey. It has to be caring and safe, as you said, Rahal. It's really something that's absolutely essential. Respectful, where we consider everyone as peers. Balanced, but balance means not just about having free time. It's about, you know, decoupling performance and impact from actually time commitments. Something important in Japan, I have to say. Connected, and agile, using technology, because that's really changes the game for all of us. That's what our interviews said. And finally, we have to be inventive. We have to make sure that not only the CEO is forward-thinking, but that we actually leverage the bold and creative millennials. So that's where we are. We hope this is going to be this is really about a culture change, that's what we said yesterday. It's massive culture change, but it's extremely exciting to think that that's the next decades where we are going to come into for organization and for us as individuals. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Well, thank you, McKinsey. Really, this is the blueprint for the future. So I won't divulge who at our table said the most fantastic thing. Basically, based on one of the figures that you had here, those that didn't think that that there was an even playing field for men and women were basically asked to leave. And I thought that was pretty amazing. So if you're a dinosaur and you don't get it, please take the exit. So that, get rid of the people who are blocking. So without further ado, we have Beth Brooke Marciniak, who has been from the very beginning. I think this was the Ernst & Young baby. You're the head of public policy for Ernst & Young, and you're the global vice chair, and have been really shepherding this from the very beginning. I believe it was in 2010 that you started this CEO challenge. And challenge is a good thing because CEOs get all together and they want to share best practices. And so if you could tell us in a few minutes how your table, what came out of your table, and in general, the comments that came out of yesterday's lunch, which was really inspiring.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nina. It was a terrific session and really catalyzed by McKinsey's good work in presenting that as a lead into the session. Well, it was a great discussion, and it really is. And it started in 2010 because it was women talking to women, and we said, why aren't the male CEOs in the room having this conversation with us? So it's been great to watch the evolution of that. What came out of yesterday were really 5 key things, which I thought were insightful and interesting of how to make further progress. The first, and it came out from several of the tables, I think, Maurice, was this issue of purpose. What is the company's purpose? So many companies today are trying to articulate not what they do, but why they do it. What is the purpose? And as we all know, that means something, especially for women. We connect meaning with what we do as well. So the purpose of the organization that we work with is awfully important. And the CEOs thought that by really challenging the purpose of their companies and being able to articulate that gives new energy and definition to diversity and inclusion. And I think with the 10 factors that McKinsey presented, when you define the purpose of an organization, you really can have people aspire in a very different way on your 10 dimensions to that. So that was number one. The second thing was that we need to change the way we value in performance reviews, change what we value in performance reviews, so that it's not just all about the KPIs around profits and quantitative measures, but also what are those qualitative measures in a performance review. I know at EY we do this, as well as defining our purpose about building a better working world, which has been aspirational to our employees. But we also have 6 key metrics. 3 of them are quantitative, but 3 of them are qualitative. And one of them has a lot to do with inclusion. How are you leading teams? Are you leading diverse and inclusive teams? And are you doing it as an inclusive leader? And it's really had a dramatic implication. So change what we value in performance reviews. The third thing is transparency. It is publish and rank companies on how we're doing on gender inclusion.
They might not like that, but
they may not like it. But as we all know, you just, unless you rank it, companies are competitive and they won't want to be down on the list of. I think we've seen that with the World Economic Forum and in their gender gap report. Countries don't like to be at the bottom of that list.
The PISA doesn't like it either. All the PISA countries. So ranking is a good thing.
Yep. So fourth thing is to build and communicate your company's business case for gender equality from senior leadership all the way down. Now, those of us in the audience would say, oh, give me a break. Have we not communicated our business case enough yet? But the discussion around this was interesting. It was Sodexo actually talked about what they've done around it. EY talked about what we've done around it, which is we all know the research around diversity and how it makes a difference. Most of that research has been done in a laboratory, so it's analyzing homogeneous teams against diverse teams, but in a laboratory setting. What Sodexo reported that they've done, what EY has done, is we took our own organizations and we used real life situations. So I'll give you an example. EY, we studied 22,000 audit engagement teams around the world, 22,000. And we looked at the gender diversity of those teams, those audit engagement teams. And what we found was the gender balanced teams, not all female, not all male, the gender balanced teams perform better financially and they perform better from a quality perspective. Sodexo had the same results. To my knowledge, not many companies have done that analysis on themselves. For us, it was important because our men don't believe the research others do. They only believe it if we do it on ourselves. So it was actually really important. So the CEO thought that would be a good thing to do. Finally, the fifth thing was to challenge our supply chains, to challenge our purchasing. So in our supply chains, are we paying attention to who we procure from? And are we doing enough to procure from gender-owned companies and businesses? And making a commitment to challenge our supply chains. Because just to give an example, if you think about your own organization, we all employ a lot of lawyers. And if we were to challenge the law firms that we work with to support us, to have diverse teams, diverse legal teams, we could change the legal profession overnight. So, just an example.
Thank you, Beth. That is fantastic. And we are really, thank you for everything you have done in getting the CEO Champions thing off the ground. And of course, who is the father of all of this is Maurice Levy is the chairman of the supervisory board of Publicis. If you don't know him, he has been here. He's been with us. He was so engaged at our table. Do you have anything to add to what was an extraordinary discussion yesterday?
Yes, we had a wonderful discussion yesterday, and before getting to that discussion, I would like to acknowledge a new fact that I was not aware of, is that Angel is becoming not only feminist, but a publisher. And that's great. It's a great news. But what he does show, and this has been also demonstrated by the remarkable study of and research of McKinsey, is that the problem is there since many, many years, and unfortunately, when you look at the progress, it may last for still many years before we get to a resolution. And that is probably one of the reasons why we at Publicis, we have decided to support heavily the Women's Forum, because I believe that this is the kind of forum where the issue is brought, discussed, and put on the table. And this has been yesterday demonstrated with that very interesting, vivid, and lively conversation that we had. It was passionate and extremely interesting. I think that Beth has covered most of the issues. What I would like to say is just two small things regarding the discussion of yesterday. The first thing is that we have a cultural problem. And that cultural problem, as Angel has said, starts at home. And education is something which starts at the early age and must continue everywhere. And in our corporation, the cultural problem has to be tackled as one of the topics that top management should handle. That's clear. We will not change the thing if we don't change the culture of the companies. The second is that we have to put in place a fairly simple program of fairness. Fairness in the inclusion, how do we include the people, how we make sure that diversity is respected, how we make sure that we give chances, equal chances, to all the people from wherever they are coming. The second is the fairness in gender equality. But when we say fairness, it's really to be fair based on the contribution of the people, giving them opportunities to grow, helping, and making sure that mentoring is not an empty word, and it's not something that is just to make things nice and interesting, but something which is real, and a KPI should be probably put in place for that. And the final thing that I would like to say is that when there is a commitment, we should make it public. Yeah. We should declare what are our objectives. We should put clear objective of numbers and report publicly, transparently, and show the progress, because it doesn't matter if we are only at 18% or at 26%. What is important is to show that from 18 we moved to 22, from 28 we moved to 33, and then to 38, etc. And we have to show the progress, because this is the only way to convince the people that we are serious about this. And last but not least, we should not forget that all the corporations are part of a city, part of a society, and we have to deliver to the society what the society is expecting from us.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
That was very inspirational. I would add one thing from if you really want to get very serious, because I think our table was quite out there, that bonuses should be linked to actually reaching targets. And I'm sorry to say that money talks more than a lot of other things. So that's the next step. If the CEOs in the room and others are here, I think that's the way to go. We have 30 seconds, Angel, if you can, on one of your topics that you wanted to discuss in the OECD, in this wonderful new pamphlet. And I'll give everyone literally one last quick word, because then I want to introduce Clara and Michel Sandel.
It's a book, it's not a pamphlet.
It's not. It's not. I have the executive summary,
Well, you
though.
know, yeah, the executive summary is for very busy people. 21 out of 37 of the countries that participated in the analysis said that violence against women is one of the 3 most urgent issues for promoting gender equality, more than any other area.
Wow.
Domestic violence legislation is found to be inadequate in 77 out of 100 countries covered by our CG, which is the Social Institutions and Gender Index, which is another aspect in how we cover this. The impact in economic terms of such discrimination is probably around 12 trillion in the whole of the world economy. So it's an ethical issue, it's a moral issue, it's a political issue, but it's also a very important economic issue.
Well, that is
so
huge.
Just a few numbers for you to reflect.
Those are huge numbers, so thank you very much. That
Okay.
is, we really need to work on that. Thank you, Angel.
Thank you.
So, George.
I would just say something that struck me yesterday, which is we always talk about the challenges and the barriers and the actions, but I can tell you in 10 years of having been in these meetings and since you've established the CEO Champion, I'm just struck at how much more sophisticated and committed everyone is.
Yeah.
And that's just gives me, numbers are one thing, but, the sense of commitment is something that inspired me yesterday.
Yeah, well, I agree. Beth.
I would just echo that. For everyone in this room, we all have a platform, and you see the commitment of the CEOs. I think they are there. Their hearts are there. They often don't know what to do. Yeah. And so hearing from us and with the platforms that you have within your own organization is so critically important, and I would just encourage us all to use it. Thank you.
We should not make gender equality or inclusion of diversity only a one-year discussion at a forum.
Yeah.
We have to make it as part of the regular policies of each company with stringent KPIs, and making sure that be it on recruitment, promotion, new opportunities, there is some very strict rules in order to open the opportunities to women and to diversity.
Thank you. Now, without further ado, Clara Gueymard, Executive President of the Women's Forum, who is going to do a very special tribute to a very special man.
Dear Michelle, to prepare this moment, I have been given a speech of 4 pages to praise your career, and it looks like a retirement speech, and you are not retiring. We can't believe that. I know you hate that. So I will say only 2 words, which I think everyone in this room will share with me. It is thank you. Because you have been a visionary leader and you have believed that diversity was need to have and not only nice to have. Thank you. Because you have understood that it was not only a moral issue, an ethical issue, or a political issue, but it was a business issue. Thank you. Because you have proved it by surveys and analysis. Thank you. Because you have implemented it every year, year after year, in your company, thank you. Because even in difficult time, and you shared that with me yesterday, even in difficult time, you have never cut the diversity team because you thought that was something that was very important. Thank you. And because you are showing that you can be a CEO, being humble, smiling, and for us, you are the incarnation of a French word that I think we can't translate, but I hope it will be the same word, have the same destiny that the word entrepreneur, which is a French word but now completely international. Your way of living is bienveillance. So thank you for all that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Clara. It's I'm very touched and it's a bit overwhelming. And I have worked and spoken many times in front of a women crowd, and it's always very humbling, right? And you as women have probably experienced that many times in front of men crowd, right? So you feel how you know how I feel now, right? Okay. Very. And we at Sodexo we actually have really focused on this subject, but I would like to recognize the fact that unless I had met Roni Annan, who is here, and who joined the company 15 years ago, I don't think we will be where we are today. She's really been an inspiration for our company, for me, and for the people of Sodexo. So we owe her a lot. And thank you, Rohini, for what you've done and what you do, not only for Sodexo, but for the condition of women in the world. So why are we in this journey? Simply because Sodexo is a people business. And we are in a business of women and men serving other men and women, right? And service relationship is a human relationship, right? So if we want to understand our customer base, we must simply, be the fair representation of the world we live in. So, of course, it's the right thing to do, to work to build a more balanced and a more inclusive world, but it's also the smart thing to do for business, to be more innovative, to be more creative,
to retain and attract talents. And I know I don't have to convince you. You are absolutely understanding of the business case, which has been developed many times and proven by many studies. And we've done it at Sodexo as well, and I encourage you to do it because it's the way to really convince your men population, right? Because men are driven by performance, right? So diversity and inclusion is progress and performance. But it's been said, you know, we're not going fast enough. It's not good enough. And you know, my conviction, and it might be a little bit simplistic, but my conviction is that we live in a man's world, right? A world which has been shaped and organized by men and for them. So we are all facing an incredible societal change and a cultural change. It will take time, of course, and a lot of energy. On top of this, every day we are reminded how fragmented some part of the worlds are becoming, where our difference should be a source of strength, they are unfortunately a source of division. So, you know, as human beings, we cannot let that happen. We all have, personally and collectively, a very important role to play. And this is why organizations such as the Women's Forum have an important voice. I think it's an incredible platform, right? To debate, to share, to learn, and to leverage the collective intelligence of all the stakeholders. And so many people are participating to this effort. And in 10 years, I have participated for the last 10 years. As a company, it has been an incredible, inspiring forum. We have learned a lot as an organization. It has helped us progress. And personally, I have also learned a lot. You know, many actions have been described on how we can get and change the things, you know. I just want to remind every one of us a few which are absolutely essential. You know, it's the, first of all, the commitment of the CEO. Also, to set that as a strategic priority for the company and invest in this. This is an investment, this is resources that we need to dedicate to this change. Also, the very importance of challenging oneself as an individual. We don't know what we don't know, right? And we have to educate ourselves to what those differences are. And we have to do this with humility, because it takes humility in order to create a very inclusive companies. And why are we want to create inclusive companies? Because we have to work and build organizations which are welcoming, both for women and men, because women and men have different cycle of careers. And we have to respect that. We also have to organize our companies through HR processes which are different and which are making our companies more inclusive. And it's been said, we have to establish ambitious targets for gender diversity and link them with incentives. We need to monitor them, we need to publish them, like we do for any other business objectives. We are all in the business world, that's what we do. We should do the same. So, we know pretty much what we have to do, okay? The challenge is execution. It's all about execution, like many, many things in companies, actually, right? You know, when we talk about strategy, it's 10%, execution is 90%. Here, it's exactly the same thing, right? So this is a cultural transformation. It's immense. The work is immense. So it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of determination. It takes focus and rigor. It is so easy to slip back if you take your eye off the ball. It is so easy, right? And it also takes time to convince those, both men and women, who don't understand why it is not a strategic, it is a strategic priority. Because it's been said again, all habits and biases are extremely hard to break. And it is difficult because it's not only an intellectual thing, it is emotional, it is cultural, it is personal, it is a fundamental cultural shift. So my conviction is that if you want to be a champion of change, it can only happen if it stems from a strong, from an authentic personal belief and conviction. You know, I am a husband, I am also a father, I'm a grandfather, and I am also a business leader. I cannot change who I am, but I can use my personal conviction to foster a strong commitment towards the advancement of women in society. And in the end, you know, I want my granddaughters to grow up full of confidence, full of conviction that they can accomplish anything they want without facing barriers and bias. And as I think about my granddaughter's future, you know, I was reflecting on my own experience. And almost 30 years ago, I found myself in a dilemma. Because Sodexo had offered me a great opportunity in the US. And for my wife, however, it would mean leaving behind a career that she enjoyed and that she was very good at. She was much better than me. It's true. It would be a considerable sacrifice for her, you know. She's an entrepreneur, and for whom a career was a vital component of her own sense of fulfillment. Yet, it was a sacrifice, and I asked her to make it. Fortunately, she's a very strong personality and a very strong person. And she was able to rebound, to pursue a career, and in the end, to start a company which turned out to be a very big success story. So that was for me an eye-opening experience that pushed me to question the traditional arrangement that had until then seemed natural for me. So this has kept me curious, and I have to say also humble on the topic, because as a man, as I said, I have not ever experienced before what women experience was. So, you know, we need to get more men on board to create awareness, that's what you said, and convince them to become agent of change. And we do that, and I see that around me, so it's very encouraging. So in the future, I will continue to engage in pushing the agenda of gender diversity, because gender diversity is now part of who I am, and I've learned a lot, but I have much more to learn. So I plan to continue to influence the topic, regardless where I am and what I do. And I plan to do this for my granddaughters and the generations to come. And actually, what is the future that I envision for my granddaughters? Well, I see a world where every organization, public, private, government, you name it, in the world has 40 to 60% women at every level in the organization, with 50% women on the executive teams and 50% women on boards. And for this, we would have a more inclusive culture where women and men can belong and succeed. A world where barriers that prevent women from advancing are slowly removed. I would like to see change happening much faster like you all, starting with the basics like pay differences and other discrimination disappearing. Not only will this enrich each of us individually, we would also see more creativity, more effective organizations with better performance, and ultimately, what we are all looking for, a more peaceful, a more balanced, and sustainable world. So I am optimistic, and I know we can get there, but I'm also realistic. So let me close with a request, if I may. And I would like to ask each of us to be bold and to be audacious and remain extremely focused and persistent despite external events. We are all engaged in a massive societal change, right? And in the end, it's a fight. So we must keep pushing our organizations. We must refuse to accept what is not acceptable. We can't compromise on the subject. And, you know, as the anthropologist Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you very much.